Hello and welcome. Growing peace in our communities is exactly why we are all here today, to learn more about how collectively each of us can play a role in moving toward a future where all young people are free to thrive in supportive communities. And we're so grateful to all of you for joining us for our second Juvenile Probation Accountability webinar hosted in partnership with Philly. So during these incredibly harrowing and overwhelming times, it feels really good to spend some time together doing concrete work and talking about strategies that we can use together and individually to push back on over surveillance of young people through probation. And so we're excited today to focus on our next piece of this work. Under these conditions, accountability should be possible, and really work on how we can challenge surveillance-based probation conditions together and individually in each place where you're joining us from today. So thank you for being with us. For more information about JPAC, please check out our website where you can learn about the Juvenile Probation Accountability Coalition. We're also excited to share with you part one of this series, just as a reminder of where we started together with our webinar in March. And then today we are thrilled to share with you part two, this toolkit to share strategies for everyone, youth defenders and advocates across the country, young people and leaders on how we can push back on probation. So today we're going to do three things together. We're going to hear from young people about their experiences on probation to really inform and lead the way and what we should be moving toward and away from. Then we're going to walk through our toolkit together. And in the end, we're going to talk about how we can each take steps forward through a call to action. But before we begin, I want to be sure that everyone's aware that our Zoom platform has accessibility features for anyone who needs them. And note that when closed caption is turned on, everyone will receive a message. However, as we stated in our pre-webinar materials, we are not allowing third-party AI note-taking tools, and those will be removed from the program. And now it is my absolute delight to introduce our speakers today. First, Kendra Vanderwater. Kendra is co-creator of Youth Empowerment for Advancement Hangout, Philly, and she lives out her belief that challenging oppressive systems creates sustainable change. Kendra is using her expertise in addressing conditions of confinement, law enforcement oversight, and violence reduction to sustain this movement that's fueled by the power of young people, to ultimately reduce neighborhood violence and to specifically address the hopes and goals of teens and young adults, according to them, and pushing back against the societal narratives and systemic oppression that young people face. Kendra's partner in this work and her co-creator of Philly is James A. James, we're so happy to have you with us again. James was born and raised in Philly, and he has an extensive background in behavioral health, case management, and providing wraparound services and advocacy to ensure that people who continue to be oppressed by systems have access to cultural and quality supports. James has assisted thousands of individuals with various supports to help them thrive and connect to sustainable support in their communities. Thank you both for being with us. And we're so delighted to welcome two young people that James and Kendra have worked with, Levi and Hafith. Levi Sirleaf is a 17-year-old born in Australia who stays and likes to keep busy. Whether he's playing sports or working or looking out for people around him, he puts in the effort and tries to be the best version of himself. He's focused on building a better future and taking advantage of new opportunities and proving that hard work pays off. Currently, Levi is in high school and he's helping to care for his younger brother. He plays basketball and has been speaking and testifying at local and state hearings about his experience on juvenile probation. Thanks for being here, Levi. And Hafith Collins is a 19-year-old from Philadelphia and proud member of the class of 2026. Congratulations, Hafith. After spending several years involved in the juvenile legal system, he stayed focused on building a better future for himself and his family. As a dedicated father, he works hard every day while also encouraging other young people to believe in themselves. And he likes actually cleaning and organizing and keeping things together. So his goal is to become a successful business owner and use his story to show how other young people, where you start doesn't decide where you end up. Thank you so much, Hafith, for being with us. And so now I'm turning it over to Kendra and James. And after their conversation with Levi and Hafith, we'll be joined by Hedgie Kim, our Senior Youth Defense Counsel at the Gault Center. Hedgie has been our leader at the Gault Center on this work, and she works every day to ensure that young people's rights are upheld through zealous attorney advocacy. Had you focus on developing policy and legal strategies to fight against the effects of structural racism in juvenile court systems and on transforming probation conditions to uphold positive youth development and racial justice for all youth. Thank you all so much for being here, and we're delighted to start with our conversation with Levi, Hafith, Kendra, and James. Thank you all so much.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. So today will be about 20 minutes of moderating and asking Levi and Hafid questions about their experiences on juvenile probation. Feel free to put in the chat whatever you want, and we will try to address things that come up as well. So welcome. So I'll start with a couple questions. I don't know if Levi and Hafid, you each can answer as you want to. When you first heard you were going to be on juvenile probation, how did you feel about it, and what were your thoughts?
My honestly speaking, my first thoughts of when I found out I was going to go on juvenile probation, uh, genuinely, I was a mix between worried and what's the word? Reassured at the same time. I was reassured solely because could be worse. I could have stayed locked up, stayed where I was at. So that's why I felt reassured. However, I was more worried about the fact that I had to live with knowing the concept or the idea of that I get to come home. But when I do come home, now everything I do has to be watched, monitored. I don't have a say in what I do. I don't have a say in what I want to do. And honestly, I was more worried about having to come home and live like a dog on a leash.
Right, yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I know, like Levi, and I know we talked about this a little bit in the past. Just even thinking about your experience, right? What grade were you in at the time you were put on juvenile probation, and what was that experience like?
So actually, I was just finishing eighth grade, and I was going into 10th grade. So when I came home, I was in 10th grade. They told me I was on juvenile probation. Uh, and it was just came home and I just did what I had to do, like what I was told to do and what I couldn't do, and I really just focused on school too while I stayed in the house.
Talk a little bit more about how did it impact your actual education program? What was it like inside of the holding facility, and then when you transitioned from the holding facility, what type of school did you enroll in afterwards?
While I was held, it's like while I was held, the stuff they had to doing in there for school, it wasn't really like my type of level. So like when I came home, I had that online. I don't know if y'all heard of CCA Commonwealth Academy, but I came home doing that, and it was like it was just a little. I don't really know how to explain it for real, but
That's fact.
when I was like basically when I was held, I was doing way more easier stuff. When I came home, I did what I was like the grade I was in, that's the work I was doing. When I was in there, they had me doing like middle school stuff.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
So
Good job.
what do you, and CCA, for people who don't know, is an online virtual school here in Pennsylvania. What do you both remember about when you were given your juvenile probation conditions or rules?
For me, me personally, I was more so left in the dark as far as my rules or regulations went. Like for example, it was one time I went to court and and the judge told me I had racked up a total of 35 violations. Me personally, I didn't even know I was committing. So I was more so left in the dark as far as my regulations with probation went, and I remained in the dark for a little minute until I started asking the right questions.
That's good. Hafi, talk a little bit about when you said 35 violations, what were some of those violations you can remember?
Some of those violations, some of those violations, a lot of them was leaving out, leaving out of my designated area. Because when you're put on the ban, you get a circle pretty much a circle you're allowed to be in. Most of my violations were being out of that was leaving out of that circle. However, these violations came from things I'm not just leaving out the circle just to have fun or just to do what people my age at the time did. No, I'm only leaving out that circle to go to school, go to the regular programming, or even sometimes it was the little things like I had very sick family members I lived with. They couldn't go out and walk to the corner store. They didn't have that privilege. So it was times where I'm the man of the house, so I have to do it, even regardless what situation I'm living in or what I gotta live with. But truth be told, they're not worried about that, so they just marked it as violations.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about, so bringing it back to where you said you were confused that you had violated, do you remember that when you were first put on juvenile probation, did you have to sign a form and go over the rules with your probation officer or review the conditions? Can you talk about what that experience was like?
I can. I did have to sign a form. However, it wasn't something I was educated on. It was more of a quick 3 minute process. They put me in a room with with a PO, however, not my PO, just a probation officer in general. And as the PO tighten my band and put it on my ankle, they simply read off of paper. However, even with that, they still wouldn't go into detail about things. This is my At the time, this is my first time. I don't have the slightest idea what probation is like. So then you can't just put me on the ban and not proceed to explain and tell me the conditions I have to meet while I'm on the ban. But I never had that privilege or experience. Instead, they just read off a paper, put me on a band, and called it a day. Sent me out to go talk to my PO.
Okay. And somebody has a question in the chat. Aaron says, did your judge view your violations differently if you went to see a friend versus go to programming?
My judge, who was Schuler at the time, no. It like from my personal experience, Schuler liked to look at me as if I was one of her own kids at the time. So it's like she would come to me more as a disappointed mom or an angered mom than she would as a judge. So no, there was no difference in it. It was all the same to her.
Okay.
Thanks for
Thank
sharing that. And then and even shifting over, so Levi, this question is for you. And just giving a little context on Levi. Levi, his case was he was when he was arrested, he was charged as an adult. So here in Philly, it was a direct file. So he went through a whole process of being decertified before being released from the juvenile holding facility and being placed on juvenile probation. So Levi, my question for you is, similar to what Hafif mentioned, what were the conditions or rules you had to follow, if any, that you can remember?
Some of the rules I had to follow. Well, when they first put you on the ankle monitor, they give you a paper and it told you what you cannot do. And some of the rules, it was like very kind of confusing because this is my first time ever being like charged in the system or whatever. So when I read some of the rules and stuff, it was like it leave you kind of like shook. It'll make me like you won't even want to move around in your house for cause like for example, on the paper it said you can't even go in your basement or like your front porch. And it's like certain times, if like let's say nobody at the house, I'm the only one there. How am I supposed to open the door for whoever come in? Or like how am I supposed to like help out with certain stuff? Cause in my house, like sometimes like I probably say the breaker panel downstairs. So whenever it turned off or whatever, nobody really know how to do it but me. So when I was on house arrest, it was like I'm thinking like if I go in the basement, would this be a violation? Or if I go to my front porch or whatever to try to open the door for somebody, am I also violating? And it was just like I don't know, like confused on where. Just, I don't know.
Okay, and now I want to follow up question too, Levi. So, Levi, given that in your bio it was mentioned that you are a Australian immigrant. We know that your mom is a West African immigrant. When we think about the conditions, the probation conditions that was mentioned to you, do you feel like your mom had barriers to like understanding like that part of the system as well,
Uh,
or do you think she fully understood a little bit more than you?
oh no, my mom is like whatever they told her, that's what she just went with, cause she just want to do the right thing. But I was trying to explain to her some of the like some of the stuff they had on the paper, like it wasn't really like right for her, because I had friends that been on house arrest before I was. And I like me hanging with them, I witnessed them do some of the stuff that they said I couldn't do. So like my mom was way more strict on me, and like she would just telling me like, yeah, you just got like just rock out until like that time over. And yeah, it's I won't say like she knew it, like she knew exactly what they was talking about. It's just like she was just following what they was talking about. And she wasn't trying to get me to end up back in there, so she was just telling me just to listen to whatsoever.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Can we talk a little bit about how your experiences on probation affected either school, work, activities, or your friendships? Tell us a little bit about your experiences with that.
So with school, it wasn't really like with school, it wasn't really difficult until like I found a school to go to. Like when I came home, I wanted to go like in person to go to school, but like I said, my mom was really strict on certain stuff because I was on GPS, and she didn't want me going in person because people could look at me weird when they see me coming back from school or going to school, like that we know, like family members and stuff. Or if I be in school, she worried if I get into a fight in there and they come to there and they see an ankle monitor, they most likely taking me back to uh JJSC. And
How did it
like
impact you, like sports, activities, and things like that?
like I couldn't do none of that. I couldn't really do nothing at all. I wanted to play sports, but when you on house restriction, you can't leave the house. And if you got a PO that's like not too like what's the word I could use? Like when you got a PO that is not really there, cause like I had my PO when I call him, he never answered the phone. He gave me his office number, so it was like I always had to send a voicemail. So me going out to go see a friend or me trying to go out to play sports for a little bit or do what a normal kid would want to do, I couldn't do that. That just messed up everything because I just came home from doing all this time. Then I got set in the house once again, and I can't go certain places in the house or I can't do certain things that I want to do because of the anger monitor.
So
Right.
we do have a question in the chat, and I think that we we should take a look at this one. And I think just sum it up. Just talk a little bit about what was your relationship like with your juvenile probation officer? How often did y'all interact and engage, and was that helpful at all?
All right, all right. Well,
We can be all the way 100 too. You can just
yeah,
be straight
yeah.
with everything.
All right,
So it's okay.
all right. Well, to answer that question fully, it would depend on the PO I've had. I've had four, so. But if we're talking about the PO I've had the longest, or my most recent PO, then our relationship was beyond rocky. And I feel like even with saying rocky, that's still sugarcoating it at the same time. But I'm gonna just say it was beyond rocky. And and honestly, it was times where I couldn't get in contact with my PO at all. It was times where he was late to our own meetings that he scheduled. And when I say late, I mean hours, 2 hours late. And he would still push that on me by the time we go to court. Oh yeah, I couldn't get in contact with Hafif, da da da. I couldn't reach him. And it'd be crazy. It'd be crazy because you couldn't reach me due to your own neglect. So it was a lot of things I couldn't do. Like for example, I haven't been to a swimming pool nor the beach in about 3 years. And that's real. I really haven't. It's a lot of privileges I never got to do because my PO wasn't down to let me do it. It was a lot. And on top of that, one of the main reasons I'm even a free man right now is due to the neglect from my PO being brought up in court or being a pressed issue. Honestly, it was like I don't know how y'all other cities or other states operate, but here in Philly, you get a PO, whether it's adult or juvenile, your probation officer is required to come out, visit your house, visit where you're living at. My PO has never even been inside my house, and I had him for 2 years.
And
Levi, want to answer that question as well?
I would like to add on to what he said. My PO, like when they assigned me to him, that was cool. And we talked over. I was, I think it was because of James. Me and him talked through like emails or whatever. But I never seen him a day in my life. I never even communicated with him. Every time I called him, everything went to voicemail. I had to leave a voicemail or whatever. Never seen him. He never visited my house. He never came to my court dates. And like, I don't know. Yeah, he never came to my court dates. He never came to my house. And like, he never answered the phone. So it was this one time, I guess he thought I had violated. That's when I think he hit me up first, letting me know that I violated or my mom. And then I had forwarded the message to James and like, we got that established. After that, never heard from him again. Like,
And I appreciate both of you for sharing just your experiences. We're over by a minute, but I want to ask you to a final two questions. In one word, how would you describe your experience on juvenile probation? And one word that you think juvenile probation can turn into if it is changed for the better?
One word,
Mm-hmm. Describe your experience on juvenile probation in one word.
you describing my personal experience on probation in one word, then I would say detrimental. If I'm describing the changes that could be brought to probation in one word, then I would use restorative.
I like
Nice.
it. Okay. How about you, Levi? One word that describes your experience on juvenile probation and another, even if it's a few words. If we could change juvenile probation for the better, how can you describe it?
one word to this. You said one word, 2 words to describe
Your experience. Yeah.
my experience. I got 2 words for that. Uh, One, I'm gonna say shut down, and two, like ignored. Like I don't know if both of the words in this fit in the same category, but I really felt shut down and ignored. And for change, I'd probably say helpful, probably helpful. I'll go with helpful.
That's good. All right, so there may be more questions in the chat. We are a couple minutes over our time, and I don't mean to rush you all off or rush us. You guys did a great job, and I'm gonna push it back to Heji Kim to go over best practices and go through our toolkit.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you so much. I feel like I am like crashing a party in a bad way because I feel like everyone wants to hear more from Levi and Hafith. I mean, huge, huge thank you to Kendra and James for your beautiful leadership and your relational work with young people in Philadelphia. And Levi and Hafith, we cannot thank you enough for just your willingness to be so honest with us about your experience and to share what your experience on probation was like. And it really helps set the conversation for exactly why we're here today, right? Where our conversation is about how can we move probation practices from detrimental, shut down, ignored to something that's restorative and helpful for young people, right? So just to do a very quick overview, right, of why we're here and who we are. The Gault Center and Yeah Philly, this amazing organization in Philadelphia led by Kendra and James. Earlier this year, we launched the Juvenile Probation Accountability Coalition, or JPAC. And one of the first things that we did was we launched a series on revolutionizing probation. And this highlighted what young people are saying about probation, right? Like I'm seeing in the chat, we cannot focus on that enough, right? Like that has to be front and center of why we're here, what we're doing. We also examined the racialized history of social control that's embedded within the history of probation itself. And look, what we found in our report is that this constant surveillance under the threat of incarceration is having a significant impact on generations of young people in our country, frankly, without much awareness or accountability on the probation system itself. So that leads us to this moment, which is part 2. And that's a discussion about what we can do as advocates, right? And we're going to be starting with probation orders. So here is what we have in store for today. First, we're going to take a moment to examine, now that we heard like what the experiences are, right? Let's take a look at what's driving those experiences. So what are the current practices around juvenile probation orders across the country? We did a national analysis as part of JPAC, but we would love to hear from you all to see what you're seeing locally. So we're going to do a series of polling as well. Then we're going to go through best practice recommendations for probation orders and the research that talks about what are the types of orders that we should be pushing for as an alternative to move us towards a more helpful and supportive space for young people. Then I'm going to turn it back to Kendra to walk through you all an amazing narrative guide that Kendra developed to really build consistent messaging, right? So we are all here as a collective. So what are the collective messaging that we can create to really drum up momentum around the change that we want to see on behalf of young people? Then we'll close out with some call to action items. There is going to be a call to action for everyone here. So 1, thank you so much for being here. And 2, we hope that you will stay tuned and engage with us on this really important issue. And we'll offer just some very concrete, tangible call to action items for you all in the end. Okay, so let's talk probation orders. So probation orders, just to level set, right? They create the legal framework that determines a young person's experience on probation, right? It's essentially a legal document, and they set the rules and they set the tone for probation. It's what dictates and controls youth behavior, and this is always under the threat of incarceration. Now, of course, there's a lot more that can go into the young person's actual experience on probation, right? Such as we heard the probation officer. What does the court culture look like? What does the judge, what's the culture of the bench, right? So all these things play a role, but probation orders are just a tangible place to start, right? To get a glimpse into what probation looks like for young people across the country. So to get us started, as promised, we're going to do some polling to hear from you all. So I'm going to ask everyone to get your phones out and scan the QR code. And the first question that we have is, when you look at the probation conditions that are ordered against youth in your jurisdiction, how many probation conditions do you all have on your orders, right? 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, or over 20. Yeah, awesome. So we have live results coming in, which is lovely. Okay, right. So some jurisdictions have 1 to 5, okay, 6 to 10, and most have 11 to 15. A handful have 16 to 20. All right. Yeah, it looks like 11 to 15. Is what most people are seeing in your jurisdiction. So the next question is, what about the length of time? So how long of a period of supervision does a young person face in your jurisdiction? All right, so looks like a lot of folks saying 6 months to a year. Over a year is also second. And then in the indeterminate lengths, right, are super tricky, because what that means is it could really last for years for a lot of young people. Our next question is, if you had to guess, what is the grade level that's required for young people to understand the probation order? All right. And there's actually a way, I will say, to test this. So if you have Microsoft Word, anyone can just plug and play in Microsoft Word. We have directions on how to do this in our toolkit. So I would encourage you to actually test this out as well. But yeah, so like 41% say college reading level to understand. And the thing is, literacy experts say, even not even talking about young people, but for adults, like what just common instruction should be written at is a 6th grade reading level. So the fact that most people are saying it's college reading level is quite concerning. Okay, and the last question that I have for this particular series are, I would love to just see, like, what are some problematic probation conditions that you see that are frequently ordered in your jurisdiction? So for here, it's like an open text field, and you can just write some of the common ones that you see like propping up in your jurisdiction. Attending school regularly, absolutely. Yes, obey all rules of the home. And that gets really tricky, because now you're you're pitting parents against young people when you're kind of bringing that into the probation orders. Search, absolutely. No social media. No hanging with the quote unquote gang members. Yeah. Staying clean, attending school daily, drug testing, the association clauses. Yeah, the search and seizure conditions are huge on these orders. Any interactions with SROs? Yeah, following anything that the parent or the PO says. Absolutely, you have these discretionary terms where it's just like you have to say, do everything that I tell you to do. Not to associate with anyone on probation or parole, which then, of course, you layer on the discriminatory enforcement and policing in our country. The child must comply with other recommendations from DJJ for counseling or other services identified. So you have the amorphous, like you have to do whatever the probation officer recommends. No tardies, letter of apology, court-ordered treatment. Life 360, which I'm assuming is a program, drug and alcohol testing, when there isn't substance use aspect to that case, that's huge, right? So when there is not an underlying offense that is related to substance use, including those types of conditions or randoms on those conditions as well. EMs for all kids waiting dispo. I mean, we heard earlier today from Levi and Hafith, the use of EM, the prevalent use of EM is absolutely detrimental for young people's well-being. No contact, vague conditions, restitution, absolutely. All right, so please continue adding those in. It will still be live on your phone. We would love to hear from you all in terms of what you're seeing as well. But I just want to take a moment here to share, like everything that you all shared is quite consistent with what we found in our national analysis as part of JPEC as well. So JPEC this year, we analyzed over 1,000 probation conditions ordered against young people across 17 states. And here is what we found. On average, right, this is consistent with what you all said too, but young people are facing about 14 conditions, ranging anywhere between 5 to 27 on a single order. The reading level for probation conditions is really at least a 12th grade reading level for a young person to fully understand what is being ordered against them. And we also found that terms are anywhere really between a month to an indeterminate period, as we saw, as well as some of you all said you have in your jurisdiction. We also categorized each condition, and we found that most conditions fall under one of these categories, right? So some form of reporting requirement to the PO, education and employment mandates, curfew, EM, search and seizure, right? Prohibitions around who you can associate with, mandated services, fines and fees, restrictions and behaviors, and even some orders had parental requirements as part of the young person's probation order. And just to give you all a sampling, right, of what some of these orders look like, it's very consistent with what you shared, but here are some real life examples of probation conditions that have been ordered against young people in our country. So we have meet with your probation officer when told and provide a release of information for treatment, counseling, and programs, right? Attend each and every day of school, complete all homework, turn in on time, and maintain passing grades. 8 p.m. nightly curfew, wear an ankle bracelet, right? Provide the probation officer with all usernames and passwords to your social networking sites. So it's like a digital search of young person social media activity. Avoid association and contact with individuals to be in places deemed to negatively impact their ability to be law-abiding, whatever that means, right? Comply with medication management, pay all costs and restitutions as a condition of probation, meaning you can't stop being surveilled unless you pay these fees. No supervised access to computer facilitated content, including social media, and a requirement that parents shall cooperate with the PO and tell the PO whenever the youth violates any conditions of probation. Again, like pitting the parent against the child. So look, oftentimes when we're faced with practices that just have been the status quo for a long time, the system, there's a tension, right? Because the system definitely expects us to just say, look, this is just the way things are. Probation orders have always been written like this ever since the beginning. But I want us to really pause here, right? With all that you shared and with all that we found in our national analysis, and to really read the words of these conditions and imagine, right? If you were under these conditions, could you succeed under these conditions? And in thinking through that question, I do want to take like a moment just to offer reflection time, right? So in just a couple words, if you don't mind dropping in the chat, like what would worry you the most if you were under these conditions? Yeah, Natalie says not even close. Anything else from other people? Just would love to hear your reflections on what it would mean to be under these conditions. Inevitable failure, absolutely. Yeah, you're being set up to fail. Yeah, so please keep sharing those reflections in the chat. But as Yeah, you would worry that you couldn't do anything right. Absolutely. Everything relies on me. I wouldn't be able to. Yeah, adults cannot succeed under these conditions. Absolutely. And then we're expecting young people with the adolescent brain development. You're set up for failure. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Like the dichotomy also with like what adult probation looks like versus the things that we're subjecting young people on in probation. Um, and absolutely, right, exchanging immediate incarceration for likely future incarceration. When I was practicing as well, there were some young people who would say like, I'd rather take a month in jail than a year on probation. And that's real because of the inevitable pipeline that probation creates for young people. Because young people also know that they are being set up for failure as well under these conditions. So I want to just say like wrap up here by saying like as we all know and you all are sharing in the chat as well, these conditions, it goes without saying that they are antithetical to what the research shows young people need to succeed and what keeps communities safe. So as all of you have shared, right, what we are doing as a society is that we are quite literally setting up youth to fail when they're under these conditions. So I want us to now focus on what works instead, right? And to do this, we're going to take a look at the research and share with you all, ideally, like what these probation orders should actually look like. So first, as a best practice, court probation orders should really be limited to 3 to 5 conditions. And this is because research shows that it's actually more effective to focus on just a few targeted objectives at a time, as opposed to subjecting youth to a long list of rules if we are serious about creating positive behavioral change in young people. And part of the reason why that's the case is, again, right, because of adolescent development. Kids are different from adults, and we have to be cognizant of that, and our practices have to reflect that as well. So we know that because of this active brain development that's happening in adolescence, young people in general just have a hard time remembering and keeping track of multiple rules, right? Especially when they're under a heightened state of stress. And can you imagine, right? Like being under all these conditions that are also arbitrary in enforcement, and knowing that you're under the threat of incarceration certainly rises to the level of heightened stress that young people have. We also know that when there are more conditions, there is a higher risk of technical violation filings and incarceration, which research also shows disproportionately impacts Black youth due to implicit racial biases and discriminatory enforcement. Next, probation order should really be written at a 4th to 6th grade reading level, right? Like we talked about this a little bit before, but there is a high prevalence of young people with language impairments in juvenile court, with some studies estimating up to 90%, and that's compared to 7 to 12 in the general population. In fact, one specific study found that the average reading level for young people who were in prison was at a 4th grade reading level. Now, what that means, right, is to address this reality, research shows that we have to be simplifying language and providing explanations as to why a condition is ordered, and that will significantly improve a young person's understanding of what is expected of them, right? We heard from the young person share reflections earlier today that this, like, what someone just told them what they were doing, didn't really have an opportunity to ask any questions, and gave them a piece of paper and asked them to sign, right? Like these are practices where we are not only setting up young people to fail because of the conditions that are being ordered, but also because of the process in which we are treating young people who are going through this system. Now, as for length, research shows that probation terms actually start becoming counterproductive the longer they are. So ideally, a 3 to 6 month period with an opportunity for early termination is a really good place to start. The idea being that probation is using that time to connect youth to meaningful and sustainable community supports that could last well beyond the period of court supervision and surveillance. And the research behind this is because research shows that system involvement in and of itself, even if limited, actually harms youth and public safety. We also know that longer probation terms actually increase the rate of technical violation filings. Again, we're creating a pipeline to incarceration through probation. And what research also shows actually leads to community safety, right, is when we meaningfully support the process of a young person developing and maturing into adulthood, which naturally leads to less risky behavior, as opposed to focusing on surveilling and punishing youth, which can lead to counterproductive outcomes for community safety. And lastly, probation conditions should always be individualized and narrowly tailored to the underlying adjudication, right? First and foremost, we're hearing from young people directly that what they need to succeed are support, stability, and opportunity, right? Not surveillance, control, or punishment. And we also know from research that positive reinforcements work more effectively on young people in creating positive behavioral change, as opposed to using surveillance or punishment-based conditions. And at the same time, when young people feel and know that conditions are disproportionate and they exceed beyond the reason why they're in court, it creates this effect of what researchers call learned helplessness. In effect, it means that young people just stop responding to consequences because they no longer believe that they have the power to change their circumstances, right? So this demonstrates how these overbroad and these vague conditions, or ordering UAs when there's no underlying offense that's related to drugs, they all are creating like a counterproductive impact on young people. Okay, so with all of that research in our back pocket now, I want us to do just one final poll, and it's a mini self-assessment. So if you think about your jurisdiction's probation orders, check all that apply. So does your order have more than 5 conditions? Is it written above a 6th grade reading level? Does it require more than 6 months on probation? Does it restrict behavior? Is there a search and seizure clause? Do you mandate services that exceed the scope of the underlying offense? You have vague and overbroad conditions, and it doesn't offer an explanation for young people as to why the condition is ordered. Okay, so we have lots of people saying they have more than 5 conditions. It's so dynamic, it moves, but across the board, right? Like we have more than 5 conditions requiring more than 6 months on probation, the vague and overbroad conditions, as well as not offering an explanation for young people as to why the condition is needed. So we actually have a larger self-assessment that's in our toolkit, and I encourage everyone to just take some time and, compare your probation order against the self-assessment, and encourage other people in your jurisdiction to do the same as well, right? But essentially, anyone who marked yes to any of these questions, right, means that you all have an opportunity in your jurisdiction to start applying some of the research that's in our toolkit to start challenging the status quo in juvenile probation orders in your jurisdiction. And the good news is, right, that you, of course, are not alone in this fight. It is entirely why we are gathered here today. And as a next step to our webinar, we'll actually start a working group for people who really want to test this out in your jurisdiction, so that you all have the support and the resources to start challenging these orders and building towards an alternative paradigm for probation orders, so that we can truly move probation practices, again, from detrimental and ignored and shut down to something that's restorative and something that's helpful for young people. And I want to share on a positive note what that alternative can look like. So our toolkit also includes a model probation order. It follows all the best practice recommendations that we just walked through. And you'll see in this order, first and foremost, that it is addressed to the young person. It uses youth-friendly language. It's written in a sixth grade reading level. And it starts out by laying out the purpose of probation to set the tone. Right, so it says probation helps keep you and others safe while supporting you to reach your goals and your full potential. It has 3 mandatory conditions and offers young people with explanations as to why each condition is ordered. It also sets the tone and the expectations of the probation officer, right? That the probation officer's role isn't just to call you up and ignore you and then call you up whenever you violate, right? But rather it's to support the young person in reaching their goals and also to help with logistics, right? Such as signing up for programs and finding transportation. So again, this is a legal document and we can create accountability measures within that document as well. And that sets the tone and the expectations for everyone in the courtroom to understand like what the purpose of probation is, why we're gathered here in this moment, and what the roles are for the probation officer and for the expectations of the young person as well. And I just want to end on a note of additional hope, which is to say this order, a version of this order, is actually in practice as we speak in Pierce County, Washington, under really the transformational leadership of TJ Bull and Kevin Williams, who led this effort a couple years ago to implement this model probation order at Pierce County. So there we have a spotlight on Pierce County and really the work of TJ Bull and Kevin Williams. And we also have their contact information for anyone who wants to learn more and also bring some of their magic in Pierce County that they had led into your jurisdiction. So now with all of that, I am excited to pass it back to Kendra to walk through our narrative guide.
Thank you, Hedgie. All right, let me share. Okay. Hold on. You see my slides or you see my notes?
Kendra, I see your notes as well.
Okay, let me end it. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know where my notes went. Give me 1 second. Technical difficulties, 1 second, please. Hedgie, I cannot find my notes. Okay, I do not know why it is not working.
Kendra, do you want me to share the slides? Would that help?
Yes, can you do that, please?
Yeah. Just give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Okay, do you see them? Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So this is part of our narrative guide that we used. And first, well, we created. And first, I want to give a shout out to the Institute of Women and Ethnic Studies in New Orleans because they do a lot of research and a lot of narrative work, and they have given trainings. And so we utilize their framework to create this narrative guide. And so I want to start with sharing with everyone that a narrative guide is important because before we can change policy, We have to change what people believe is possible. And oftentimes, we also have to change what they believe the problem actually is. So, we're going to talk a lot about that today. Next slide, please. So, what are we trying to change? Hedgie talked a lot about how young people are set up to fail. A lot of the comments were around young people being set up to fail. They're not able to adhere to rules and conditions of juvenile probation because they're very confusing, they're excessive, and a lot of them are unrealistic. So we're trying to change the narrative because for decades, the dominant narrative has been if a young person fails probation, the young person has failed. So we are trying to introduce a shift from individual blame to examining the design of probation itself. We're not trying to argue against accountability. We're really trying to challenge the approach to accountability that makes success very difficult because let's face it, the young people we have worked with on probation, it comes directly from their experiences, from what our organization does every day. We have not seen a young person be able to be successful on juvenile probation without advocacy and without lots of support surrounding them to get them off of probation. So we're trying to shift from young people fail on probation because they make poor choices. That's what usually the narrative is, and how individual failure becomes the story. We would like to switch to young people are often set up to fail by excessive, confusing, and unrealistic conditions. Do you see how the story has become about the system? So we're moving from individual accountability to how we hold the system accountable and redesign it. We're taking the blame from the young person and we're saying we need to do better and we need to stop setting them up to fail. Next slide, please. So this is where we can take it to the chat. So when you hear the word accountability, what does that mean to you? Put some things in the chat. What does accountability mean to you? Responsible, being self-aware. People argue about what it means every day. Good. Acknowledging and taking responsibility. So we're thinking beyond probation. So what does it mean? Because it's meaningful accountability. And I know people throw that word around. I see restoration. I see acknowledging the harm that was caused, working to repair harm, accepting imperfection, and working to fix it, owning your actions, public health as public safety. Good. So accountability varies, right? But a bridge can be accountability can mean responsibility without requiring excessive surveillance and impossible expectations. There is a narrative around different states and counties and juvenile probation in general that a young person has to have impossible expectations and surveillance to be held accountable. So when we heard Hafith and Levi talk about how they weren't allowed to go to play sports, they weren't allowed to leave their house even if it was something that would be beneficial to their productivity or their development, is because the narrative is that young people should be punished and surveilled, and that is how they learn accountability. But we know that that is not true. So JPAC, the Juvenile Probation Accountability Coalition, in our framing is that accountability should be understandable, achievable, and connected to positive youth development. So we know that's responsibility, it's owning actions. Clarity is knowing expectations, and opportunity is having a real chance to succeed. And we have to help provide those opportunities, regardless of whether you are that attorney, you are the probation officer, you are the advocate, you are the social worker. Young people deserve opportunities and they can achieve accountability and take responsibility without being punished or harmed. So I want you all to sit with that for a moment. Next slide, please. So we'll walk through our four pillars briefly. This campaign will have four pillars. It will be clarity, fairness, family stability, and public safety. So with clarity, youth cannot follow expectations they don't understand. This is part of the confusion with probation conditions and orders. And again, we heard young folks and Hafith and Levi talk about how they are always confused. They don't know when they're doing something right. They don't know when they're doing something wrong because there is nothing that is clear that they received that they can understand. So we know that young people succeed when expectations are clear. That is also why the Universal Probation Order with three conditions will create accountability that works for young people. We talk about fairness. No youth should face dozens of conditions in one jurisdiction while another one faces only a few. I think about how things are here in Philadelphia. We don't even have a probation order that a young person gets when they're put on probation. Their conditions are typed sloppily on a docket and they're all over their juvenile docket. So there's not even someone sitting down and saying, hey, this is what the rules are. This is what you have to do. These are the expectations. It's just on a docket. And Philadelphia really needs to implement something like this youth-friendly probation order because again, it's not fair. We also heard about in the analysis of the 65 orders across the country, the average number of conditions was 14. That is way too many. And I think and what we know is if young people trust the people that they work with, they meet with them, they are treated fairly, they will have more fair conditions and they will abide by those conditions if they are working in a supportive manner with the POs and their legal team. Family stability. Probation should support families rather than add impossible burdens. And when I speak about the experiences here, I'm going to speak only about Philadelphia because that is where we live and where we work. And oftentimes, the work we are doing too, we do focus groups and interviews around young people's experiences while they're on juvenile probation and also with their families. But a lot of families and caregivers report that they also feel like they are on probation and incarcerated as well. And there's not a lot of support for the families when we know that lots of families need support, whether that's financial, whether that's mental health support, whether that's caregiving support. So we do want to see probation change to more supportive services. There was a report that came out in the city a couple years ago that reported that out of juvenile probation's budget, they spent 2% of their budget on any supportive services for young people. 2%. So when we're thinking about that, they have the funds to be more supportive and they need to be pushed to be more supportive because they are looked at as law enforcement, but also we're saying that they should be changed. They should work with more social workers and they should be supported in terms of opportunities to get them off of juvenile probation instead of keeping them on. And the fourth pillar is public safety. We know that youth connected to school, work, family, and community are more likely to succeed. Um, a part of our model here is a holistic defense model. While we have our own legal team and attorneys and legal coordinators and advocates, we know that when we work together with everyone in terms of the school, the family, work, and the community, and provide that support for that young person, they are more likely to succeed. And so this needs to be pushed in terms of the narrative when it comes to public safety, because what we see is that, they'll say things like, judges will say things like, well, we can't release this person because they'll just end up on the news if I release them because they stole a car. When the reality is, what type of support does this young person have? And how can we strengthen public safety by supporting this young person to stay in the community with services that are beneficial to their individual needs? So when we think about the core message in our message house, it always should be young people succeed when expectations are clear. Next slide, please. So we talked about, could you succeed under these conditions? We know that we found an average of 14 conditions written at a 12th grade reading level is actually like 12.7. So really that's college reading level. And think about the expectations that you manage in your own life. When we sit here and we think about work, family, appointments, bills, deadlines, everything else. If someone gave you 14 rules at a college reading level and told you that violating any of these rules related to the work, family, appointments, bills, and deadlines could have serious consequences, like a violation and going into confinement, how confident would you be that you could remember and follow every single one on your own? And people can say some things in the chat and talk about these things, but I know I could not. I mean, I have to manage all of these things now as one person, as an adult, and I think about how we subject young people as young as 10 years old to the conditions of juvenile probation. And we're thinking about this in a way of who do they live with? What are they doing every day? And I think about the average young person that we work with at Yeah Philly. They have been arrested at least 4 times by the time they come to Yeah Philly. They stay an average of 2 years in our organization for our programming. But the things that we do every single day, we get young people off of probation. We get young people out of the system and we focus on those long-term needs in terms of how do we help young people create a life that they want and they deserve. They go through all types of things as young people and they go through very adult problems. And so if we are putting them in a system that says they're supposed to be focused on treatment or rehabilitation, and in reality, we are pushing for more mass incarceration and we're sending them back to incarceration. This is not the way that we know that they deserve to live. That is not a life that they want or deserve. And so we work really hard to advocate on their behalf to get them out of this system. Next slide, please. So, changing the story. Let's talk about how we can reframe this sentence using this guide. So, you can answer in the chat. They violated probation because they wouldn't follow the rules. How would you reframe that narrative in the chat? I'll give you about 10 seconds. Remember, we're not focusing on the individual. Somebody said your rules are stupid. We're not focusing on the individual. We are focusing on the system design. How are we moving the story from individual blame to redesigning the system? Someone put recidivism for kids exceeds that of adults. The rules were impossible to follow, and you can't fail something that is impossible to do. The rules were written to not be clear, and so the client could not follow the rules, resulting in alleged violations. The expectations weren't clear. The rules are not offered in an accessible way for youth to understand. Rules were not developmentally appropriate. The system failed to meet the client's needs. I really like that one because what this is we are not focusing on the individual needs of the young person, and we should be. We talk a lot about brain science. We talk a lot about how young people's brains are not fully developed until they are almost 26. It's getting older now, right? So how are we designing things for adults when we should be designing them for young people? They have to be tailored to their individual needs and they have to be developmentally appropriate. So this is our last slide, but I do want to take a moment to talk about how Yeah Philly is moving towards legislative action with this campaign. I hope you all take the toolkit and move through it, read it. I hope you all do the self-assessment. And when we start meeting with the larger Juvenile Probation Accountability Coalition, we hope that you all are waiting to join. Our meetings will start sometime in January of next year. But the reality is, we want people to join this as a work group. We want folks to make sure that they get what they need in their jurisdiction, whether it's a city or state or wherever. So while this is a national campaign, these things will be tailored to your needs in your jurisdiction. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Pennsylvania and what's happening now with Yeah Philly. So with this campaign, we've created some documents to where we have been having legislative meetings. We're going to focus on proposing two legislative priorities in terms of changing the conditions. We want the conditions to be clear, developmentally appropriate, focused on youth success. And we also want to make sure that they are individualized. So one of the policies will be focused on changing the way conditions are written and implemented for young people. Also, it will be focused on some technical violation language in terms of if it's not a new crime, you should not be sent to incarceration for a technical violation. There will be another legislative priority around transparency in the state of Pennsylvania and how probation as a state should be at the state level should be reporting certain things because we have a lot of transparency issues here in the state as well as Philadelphia. So we've been meeting with legislators about the conditions here in Philadelphia and in other counties, and legislators are on board because they didn't think it was an issue. So taking this information, bringing it to legislators, hopefully having a bill introduced by the legislative session early next year. And we will be taking this campaign. Young people will be running with it. We will be creating ads across the city. We will be having events to educate more folks around what juvenile probation conditions look like, what's the current practices, what are they supposed to be doing, and how can we do things like an advocacy day and push for this to become legislation? Because while we work in Philadelphia, this is a huge issue in the state of Pennsylvania, and we want young people to be successful. So when we think about how, if you're on the other side of the aisle, whatever you believe, regardless of what your role is, you should believe that accountability should be possible, and you should believe that young people deserve better when it comes to supervision. And so I hope you all take this toolkit, work through it. I hope you email Hedge Your Eye about the coalition, and we're looking forward to connecting with you more around the probation issues.
Thank you so much. What a perfect segue for us to have our call to action and really think together about what can each of us do individually and then collectively. But first, I hope you'll help me give a big round of applause to Kendra and James and Levi and Hafith and Hedgie for sharing their experience, their wisdom, their research, their writing, and their ideas with all of us. So in the chat, I hope you'll share some love with all of them and give them some gratitude. We also, of course, want to thank you for taking your time to be with us. But more importantly, we want to thank you for what's coming ahead. We're really hoping that all of you will join us in the Juvenile Probation Accountability Coalition to take steps away from this system that currently surveils and controls young people rather than supports and provides community for them, which we know is what they need. So we'll hope you're going to do a few things. One, first, can you please fill in the survey for us and give some feedback on what you need to be able to take step forward in this work? So it's a brief survey. We hope you'll fill it out. And then we have several things we'd like to ask you to do in our call to action. So we've got a list of opportunities for everyone who's here with us today to take steps forward. Thanks so much to Kendra for walking through the narrative toolkit. That is the first thing that all of us can do. Can you write a post and share it in your community? Can you actually coordinate with a range of people or organizations where you live and pepper your community with calls to action on probation and help people understand what's happening with surveillance where you are? So the toolkit is here. It's available for you. That brainstorm piece that you did with Kendra just now is exactly what we hope you'll do with colleagues in your offices and with leaders in your community, helping people really lean into what are the words being used to talk about what happens to young people on probation, but what's the reality of what's happening on probation? And I know all of us will have keen in our minds the words of Hafith and Levi. The system is detrimental. It shuts us down and ignores us. In this work, we have to help other people understand that juvenile probation is not benevolent and it is not kind. It is causing harm to young people and therefore to the communities that we all live in. So what can we do to help and make it restorative and helpful? You can write op-eds. There are many ways these narrative strategies can be employed where you are. So just think broadly. Have brown bag lunches with people in your office, whether you're a defender or an advocate or a probation officer, and begin to talk about narrative and narrative strategies that can be employed where you are. And if you are litigating and you're in court, let's talk about some litigation strategies. So what we love so much about this toolkit is the concrete way that we can weave the research and the narrative that's in the toolkit into motions practice, into pleadings. We can invite experts in to help us litigate, to help us help courts really recognize what's happening to young people on probation. So when we started doing this probation work and analyzing probation orders over a decade ago, what we heard most frequently from people in courts was they hadn't given a thought to the fact that their probation order may have been drafted more than 2 decades ago, or the language that was on it, or the conditions that kept getting added year after year after year without anything being taken off. So, how can you litigate about these strategies? File against these surveillance-based probation conditions in motions. Pick 1 or 2 conditions that are on your probation officer that you and all the defenders and advocates and family members and community members want to get to as a starting point. So litigation, and then of course policy strategy. So if you're working in a community where you can find allies and you can talk to probation officers and the administrative office of the court, let's go for policy consideration. So the model probation order is there. And the model probation order can happen in many different ways. So in some jurisdictions, it can be that the probation department itself decides they're going to implement a new order. In other places, it's the court and it's the administrative office of the court that dictates what's on the probation order. First and foremost, we have to understand who's in charge of the probation order in our jurisdiction. How do we know whose responsibility it is and who has control over what's on the actual order? So having those conversations and really beginning to build coalitions where you are can help us build those policy strategies. And of course, none of this happens without community. So we hope that this webinar and the work that we are doing in the Juvenile Probation Accountability Coalition and really across all of our work at Philly and the Gault Center helps us all lean into community strength and community resources. So the Gault Center is really excited about another piece of this work, and it's a community asset map. And we hope that each of you on this call, the defenders who are working with young people and hearing about where strength is in community and what programming is actually supporting young people in the way they want to be supported, that you reach out to us and you let us know where those organizations are so that we can really help shine a light on the fact that community strength exists and that we have an opportunity collectively to lean into all of those strengths. And then finally, last but not least, please join us in the Juvenile Probation Accountability Coalition. Please join our working group. Kendra and Hedgie's emails are on the slide. Please reach out to either of them and let them know that you're interested. And we're especially interested if you're in a jurisdiction where you've begun to have these conversations and that there is an interest and awareness of the need to take steps forward and away from what's currently happening in the system. We'd love to talk with you about what's happening in your jurisdiction. We're happy to provide technical assistance where we can. We also invite you to submit grant opportunities to get support for intensive technical assistance where you are, and invite us to come partner with you in your jurisdictions. So as Kendra said, we're going to begin earnestly having these coalition meetings in January, but between now and then, our hope is to hear from you. And our hope is to grow the dialogue and the conversation about what's happening across communities. So we hope that you'll reach out and we hope you'll let us know what's happening where you are. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for what you're going to do in the days ahead. So right now in the chat, we'd like to ask you each to put one thing in the chat that you think you can do where you are to advance transforming probation from detrimental, shutting young people down and ignoring them, to making it more helpful and restorative through what you've heard today on our second Juvenile Probation Accountability Coalition webinar. Thank you for joining us. Please share your ideas in the chat.
It's been a long time coming, but I know.
Change gonna come, it might not be today. Look at MLK, he was trying to make a way. Trying to make a change and got hit a broad day. Change gonna come, shit, that's just what they say. Change gonna come, it might not be today. Look at MLK, he was trying to make a way. Trying to make a change and got hit a broad day. Change gonna come, shit, that is what they say. If it do, it ain't coming easy, I can tell you that. They knew who to shoot, Malcolm X was speaking facts, so they did him dirty. They brought cocaine to the hood, same way as the Perkies. Giving guns to the shorties, knowing that he thirsty. Tell him slide. Slide. The only time I catch a vibe when I'm getting fried. The only time he catch a vibe when somebody die. Change gon' come, but it come with time. Change gon' come, but it might come with pain. They use the angles by news, we bustin' down the chain. Change gon' come, I ain't long, we need a change. Change gon' come, I ain't long, we need a change.
I've been waiting on a change in the trap while I'm rolling dice. I done had too many nights when I slept with mice. And I had to keep my distance cause I pepped the bluff. Then I came to realizations why they acting tough. Yeah, I started from the bottom, had to work my way up. Throw the blanket on the heater just for me to warm up. I've been waiting on the changes, it really gon' come. Said I've been waiting on the changes,
niggas be saying they my brothers, they ain't never been my brothers. I've been through the struggle with my cirrhosis under the covers. I've been waiting for a change, but I feel like it wasn't coming. I remember long days seeing bro trapping like it was nothing. I've been trying to keep my mouth shut, but I can't do it anymore. Cops killers left and right, I guess they wanna go to war. And if you wanna make that change, you gotta look up in that mirror. You gotta start with yourself and the others follow with you.
I've been waiting on a change while I do like Dr. Kane. And you better watch these cops dead, cause we ain't the same. And it's crazy how they killing blacks, they crushing all our dreams. And it's crazy how they killing blacks, they crushing all our dreams.
And y'all ask me how I feel, man, I don't really feel the same. Cops killers over our skin color, that shit ain't gonna change.
That's why I watch my back, I hit my knees and I pray. Every time I hit the door, thanks the Lord for this day.
And I'm really scared to die, cause I don't know what's beyond that sky. They took my little cousin from me, and that shit hurt me not to cry.
And the world took my pop-up, so I'm looking at the sky. Some days I hit my knees and I ask the world, I've been waiting on a change in the trap while I'm rolling dice. I done had too many nights when I slept with mice. And I had to keep my distance cause I pepped the bluff. Then I came to realization why they acting tough. Yeah, I started from the bottom, had to work my way up. Throw the blanket on the heater just for me to warm up. I've been waiting on the changes, it really gon' come. Said I've been waiting on the changes, it really gon' come.
Is it really gon' come? Is it really gon' come? Is it really gon' come?